Hello, how is everyone today? We are going to look at assessment data from Evergreen School District and 3 elementary schools within the district. We will examine 2 different assessments that were completed, talk about strengths and weaknesses, strategies or practices to be implemented in order to improve data and help the district become more proficient in reading. The data shown is from the reading assessment and the Ohio State ELA 4th grade proficiency test. The reading assessment is a norm reference test. A norm reference test is a standardized test that compares student performance to other students. The data is usually compared locally and nationally. The reading assessment is administered 3 times a year, usually in the fall, winter, and spring. It measures reading comprehension through the domains of word knowledge and skills, comprehension strategies, construct meaning, analyzing literary text, understanding author's craft, and analyzing argumentative and evaluative text. This graph shows the percentages per grade level that met, exceeded, or were below the benchmark for their grade level. Do you see any trends among the data? Anything surprising stand out to you? Each grade level, grades 1 through 4, had percentages below the benchmark that were in the 40s range and was close to the same number, while the percentage at or above the benchmark was all in the 50s range. Grade 4 students in the Evergreen District scored 56% above benchmark and 44% scored below benchmark. Let's move on to the next assessment, the Ohio State Test English Language Arts. For this data, we are looking at the district as a whole, as well as 3 elementary schools within the district. This assessment is a criterion reference test and is administered at the end of each school year for grades 3 through 8. This assessment is based on Ohio's learning standards and focuses on 3 areas for reporting scores. The areas are reading informational text, writing, and reading literary texts. Who remembers what a criterion reference assessment is? Correct. Table 2. Criterion reference assessment is the process of evaluating and grading the learning of students with a set of pre-specified qualities or criteria without referencing the achievement of others. Brown 1998 and Harvey 2004 helped us with that definition. For this assessment, the Ohio Learning Standards are the pre-specified qualities that students need to meet. Now, let's take a look at the Evergreen District results. Evergreen District has 353 students, earned a scaled score of 719, and was 69% proficient, which means they're not doing too bad, but they have some work they could do to improve. The student count was created by taking an average of the student counts from the elementary schools. The scale score and percent proficient were also averaged from the data among the 3 elementary schools. Looking at the district performance levels, we can see the district scored 17% below proficient, 35% at or near proficient, and 48% above proficient for reading informational texts. For reading literary text, the district scored 16% below proficient, 46% at or near proficient, and 39% above proficient. For the writing category, the student scored 19% below proficient, 40% at or near proficient, and 41% above proficient. This data shows us the students in the district struggle with reading literary texts. We can also determine that students struggle with reading comprehension skills when reading literary texts. This can be determined by looking at the number or content statements 23 and 26. For item 23, which focuses on comprehension skills, 84% of students scored incorrectly, while 16% earned 1 point and 0 earned 2 points for the standard. Item 26 also focuses on comprehension skills, but focuses more on the features than summarizing the text. Now, we are going to take a quick look at the 3 categories presented in the Ohio State ELA test. We're going to start with informational texts. What are informational texts? As Duke explained to us, informational texts are a type of non-fiction text with the primary goal to inform a reader about the world. What are some examples that you might see? Correct. Some examples are newspapers, biographies, online articles, brochures, encyclopedias, dictionaries, and scholarly journals. Let's take a look at the 4th grade Ohio Learning Standards for reading and informational texts. Ohio expects 4th graders by the end of the year to be able to find and identify key ideas and supporting details, analyze the process or order of the text, explain and summarize the events that happen throughout the text, identify and define familiar and unfamiliar vocabulary words, compare and contrast different points of view, and implement visual aids to improve reading comprehension of informational texts. That information was provided from the Ohio Learning Standards. Next, we're going to move on to the writing processes and styles regarding 4th grade. Before we do that, do we have any questions or concerns? Okay, we're going to move on then. As we know, writing is an important process in everyday life. As we discussed, the 4 types of writing styles are opinion, narrative, explanatory or informative texts, and research papers. Opinion writing can be an important type of writing to implement because students can use their voice to state their opinion and beliefs about the topic at hand. According to literacy ideas, the author should identify the audience and speak clearly, take a stance, choose appropriate evidence, and draw conclusions. Literacy Ideas 2023. The next piece of writing is the informative or explanatory text. What is the purpose of this type of writing? You're close. The purpose is to explain or inform the audience about the selected topic. Some elements to include in an informative or explanatory text are introduce a topic and grab the reader's attention, clearly convey information and ideas about a topic, clearly organize ideas and information using strategies such as compare and contrast, cause and effect, definitions, and classification. Uses formatting, graphics, and multimedia such as hyperlinks when appropriate, and ends with a conclusion that summarizes the main points, follows logically from the information presented. That was provided by Knott's 2012, paragraph 3. The next type of writing category is narrative. A narrative is used to tell a story. I'm sure you hear lots of narratives every day in your classroom. Most narratives include the following elements, either at the beginning, middle, or end. At the beginning, we see the characters, the setting, and a problem. In the middle, we see the events and the action take place and unfold the problem. And at the end, we see the solution or the resolution to the problem. The last category of writing we are looking at is the research paper or project. Students are given a topic and multiple types of sources to help find data for the selected topic. The teacher should model how to find good resources when online and what to do with that information once they have found it. Writing can sometimes be harder to grade when compared to reading. Teachers do use checklists and rubrics to help with grading papers. The students may use the checklist created by the teacher to make sure they have all of the items needed to write a strong and well-written paper. The grading rubric will allow the student to see what they have done well and what areas they need to work on when writing a similar paper. Before we move on to literary text, I'm going to give you a 2-minute break. Alright, now that we're back, we're going to move on to discuss literary texts. Literary texts are used to tell stories, but can also sometimes teach a lesson or provide another viewpoint. What are some examples you see in your classroom? You're right. To go along with that, I see fiction novels, short stories, poetry, fables, fairy tales, autobiographies, plays or drama, and many more. A RAB 1993 considers 4 of the main characteristics for literary texts. A literary text is a sample of language used to be read and understood. The illustration and expression of an artistic sensibility embedded in a specific literary genres, such as fiction, poetry, and drama, having its own fiction and own formal laws. An artifact to be related to its social historical context, of which the writer's biography is one element, and a semiotic construct with a set of devices and codes, which definitely marks it off as literary, which therefore is open to interpretation. This is provided by Abdelaziz, 2009, pages 26 and 27. As we can see, literary texts play an important role in the early childhood setting. You're probably wondering why literary texts are so important in the English language classrooms. They provide cultural and authentic materials that support students and teachers, which they can value, offer students opportunities to develop and expand their language and structure of language skills, develop and strengthen vocabulary skills, and allow students to tap into their creative and imaginative sides. That information was provided from Bolero 2015, pages 2 through 3. Now, we are going to look at the Ohio Learning Standards regarding reading literary texts for 4th grade. By the end of 4th grade, students are expected to identify and interpret main ideas, along with supporting details, analyzing the elements of literary text, such as analyzing the theme, plot, characters, setting, etc., identifying new or familiar words, comparing and contrasting structural elements of different literary texts, for example, comparing poetry components compared to dramas, explore different points of view, compare and contrast elements and main ideas or topics in the different types of literary texts, and make text-to-text, text-to-self, and text-to-world connections based off of background knowledge and comprehension skills. Looking back at the data from Evergreen District, the students were also struggling with comprehension skills. We are now going to discuss what comprehension is, why it is important in literacy, and strategies to implement in order to increase these skills. Looking at the PowerPoint slide, we can see that comprehension also plays a big role in everyday life, as well as in the classroom regarding literacy. Comprehension is a big component of literacy. These skills are often introduced and developed in the primary elementary grades. As the National Reading Panel began the analysis of this existent research data on reading comprehension, 3 predominant themes emerged. 1. Reading comprehension is a cognitive process that integrates complex skills and cannot be understood without examining the critical role of vocabulary, learning and instruction, and its development. 2. Active interactive strategic processes are critically necessary to the development of reading comprehension. And 3. The preparation of teachers to best equip them to facilitate these complex processes is critical and intimately tied to the development of reading comprehension. That is provided from Camille Michael L. et al. 2000, page 228. As this shows, we can't understand or comprehend the text if we don't have all the pieces or all the information that we need in order to get a sense of the bigger picture. As we already know, educators play a big role in a child's literacy journey and understand that comprehension skills are a big building block regarding reading. What are some questions you have about comprehension or comprehension strategies? Reading comprehension skills allow students to make meaning of the text and understand what is happening. It is also important to help foster comprehension skills for students who are identified as struggling readers. If we can't develop strong comprehension skills, then that will also foster a love of reading and an enjoyment for the struggling readers. How many components of reading comprehension are there? You're correct. There are two main components regarding reading comprehension skills. They are vocabulary knowledge and text comprehension. Vocabulary knowledge is where reading comprehension starts. Students with good vocabulary strategies understand what words mean and have the background knowledge or schema to help understand a given text. It also includes strategies for using context clues to determine the meaning of an unfamiliar word. Context clues are clues that students use throughout their reading to help them based off of visuals or other words that have been read. The reading process is over before it even begins if students don't have solid vocabulary knowledge or the ability to learn new words. This is from Melvin 2022, paragraphs 14 through 15. This last quote should make you ponder about how to effectively implement vocabulary strategies to enhance future reading comprehension skills. This quote also explains the essence of the relationship between vocabulary skills and reading comprehension skills. Text comprehension is a big picture look at what exactly a text means. It helps students interact with a text to understand what's being said and what they need to learn from it. When students have good text comprehension skills, they can answer questions about what the author is saying, summarize the passage, and connect information between texts or prior knowledge. That is also from Melvin 2022, paragraphs 16 through 17. Text comprehension gives students a sense of what is going on in the texts and can help them apply morals or lessons learned to the everyday life. Some strategies to implement with reading comprehension are activating and using prior or background knowledge, which is our schema, questioning, predicting, making inferences, visualizing, and summarizing. Why do we ask questions in our everyday lives? Table 1, you are correct. We ask questions to make meaning or sense of something and to have better understanding. Just like our everyday lives, we also ask questions while reading in order to make sense of the texts and have a better understanding. Active reading means we think about the text as we read. Asking questions is a reading strategy we use before we read, during our reading, and after our reading. That is from readingcomprehensionstrategies.org, paragraphs 1 through 2. Why is it important to ask questions before, during, and after a reading? Why don't you think about that for a minute? These opportunities give us a chance to become active readers and think or ponder about different viewpoints or story elements involved in the text you are reading. A questioning strategy that I like to use is the QAR, or the question answering relationship strategy. Question answer relationships comprehension strategy teaches students how to ask questions about their reading and then how to find the answers in their questions, whether it means locating a specific fact, drawing an inference or a prediction, or connecting the reading to their own experience. This is from Reading Rockets 2023, paragraph 1. The QAR strategy splits questioning into 4 categories: right there, slow down, author and you, stop, and on my own. As we can see on the PowerPoint, the right here category focuses on questions and answers that can quickly be found in the text. These questions are usually part of the 5 W questions, such as who, what, when, where, and why, and how. The Think and Search category requires a little more time in order to find the answer. Students can still find the information, but they're going to have to dig a little deeper in the text for it. The Author and Me category focuses on applying background knowledge and schema and information gained from reading the text in order to make predictions and inferences about what will happen next. The last category, On My Own, requires readers to apply their background knowledge again. However, this time, students are thinking about the text they have just read, applying background knowledge about the topic at hand, and applying their opinion to the text. This is from Reading Rockets 2023 in the last paragraph. Excuse me. We are also going to talk about summarizing comprehension skills before moving on to the closed reading strategy. You should implement into your classrooms to improve and strengthen comprehension. What do you think summarizing is? Have you used it in your classrooms a lot? Yes, I can see that by your hands that a lot of you use this every day. Summarizing is how we take larger selections of texts and reduce them to the bare essentials, or the gist, the key ideas, the main points that are worth noting and remembering. Webster's calls a summary the general idea in brief form. It's the distillation or reduction of a larger work into the primary notions. Summarizing 2023, paragraph 1. When we ask students to summarize a story, we are hoping they will give us the gist of what is happening in the story and identify main ideas and supporting details. When we ask students to give us a summary, instead of having them write a long summary that gives us all the details in the book, try having them focus on the main ideas, supporting details, new or unknown vocabulary words, characters, and the plot. Excuse me. Do you have any ideas or questions before we move on to closed reading? Looking at the PowerPoint, we determine the definition of a closed reading. Closed readings show students and teachers to read the text, reread the text again to get better clarity about the meaning of the text, and to make connections from the text in order to have a better understanding of what has happened throughout the text. Some steps to consider when completing a closed reading of a literary text are selecting your text, engaging with the text, asking and or answering questions that are dependent on information from the text, and adding visuals to help engage with their connection and discussion. When selecting a text for closed reading, you need to consider 2 questions. First, is there enough going on with the language and craft of the text to warrant the attention of multiple readings? Second, does the understanding that comes from closed reading sufficiently benefit students from the light of larger goals, of course, of unit? The answer to both needs to be yes, in order to keep closed reading from failing into its reputation merely as an exercise. Filkins 2023, paragraph 2. It is important to think about your students when you are selecting a text to implement for a closed reading lesson. As you are selecting a text, think about your students, their strengths and their weaknesses, their interests, and what kinds of literary texts they enjoy reading. The next step of a closed reading is to reread the text. This time, as you are reading the text, you are taking a deeper look and analyzing the meaning of the texts, the message the author wants to convey to you, and thinking about text connections. Some questions to consider while engaging deeper with the text are: keep asking yourself, what's going on, and how do I know? Second, to examine the ways the author uses language and the discipline-specific structures of literature to create meaning. Your focusing question here might be, how do the author's choices help me understand or appreciate something I didn't notice the first time I read? Third, to consider thematic meanings and connections between the text and others like it. Here, ask yourself, what does the text cause me to think or wonder about some larger aspect of the text and of the human condition? This is from Filkins, 2023, paragraph 2. As you are reading the text for the first, second, or third time, it is important to be asking questions and to be thinking about the bigger picture. You're probably wondering when you should implement a closed reading activity. You should implement closed reading activities during your ELA block, but can also incorporate them into your social studies or science units of study as well. I would implement closed reading activities in your ELA, social studies, or science blocks of time at least once a week, but would suggest practicing them 2 to 3 times a week if possible. Do we have any questions before moving on to the example of closed reading activity? Does anyone need to go to the bathroom before I start? All right, I'll give you a few minutes. All right, now that everyone's back, let's take a look at this model. In my class, I use different fiction reading passages. Today we are going to look at the robotics guy. I retrieved this passage from Teachers Pay Teachers. It was created by Miss Doodlebug. First, I will read aloud the passage to the students. Second, the students will read the passage again. They will be analyzing the text and digging a little deeper compared to the initial read. In the initial read, the students will highlight unfamiliar vocabulary words, underline important ideas, and write questions they may have so far about the text. Next, students will read the text for a second time, hoping they get more information compared to the first time they read. They will continue to add notes to their copy of the text. Now, the students will go back to their text to look at their notes. They will identify and define the unknown vocabulary words they highlighted within their texts. I have them try to use context clue skills first. If they are still struggling to define the vocabulary term, then they may use a dictionary to help them. My goal with this step is to help my students have a better understanding of the text, since they know what the unknown words mean. Then, the students will read the text for the third and final time. With this reading of the text, my goal is to strengthen their vocabulary, comprehension, and summarizing skills. The students will begin searching for answers to questions they may have asked of the text earlier, find meaning to a part of the text that they were not able to decode on an earlier reading, find and identify main ideas and supporting details from the text, and begin making connections from the text to real life, the world around them, and other texts they have read previously. Since the students have completed 3 readings of the text, we will come back together as a whole group to have a discussion about the text and answer any questions they may still have. Together, we will discuss the gist of the text, review unknown vocabulary words the students defined, and talk about possible themes of the texts. Once we have finished our whole group discussion, I will have the students respond to some comprehension questions and complete a short retelling of the text, which will also serve as a reading assessment. After the students have completed their closed reading, they will complete an assignment to reflect on the text they have been working with. The next piece to consider when completing a closed reading assignment is differentiating. Differentiation is the idea that you are modifying the work in order to meet the students at their level in order to reach their instructional level and be a successful reader. For the model closed reading, the teacher will read the text the first time, and then the students will go back and read and reread the text silently and add annotations as they complete the silent reading. For students who are struggling readers or need accommodations, the teacher will read the text to them or have a computer read it to them as well. Each time the student reads the text, the teacher will talk with them about anything new that they noticed or questions about it, and will add those ideas to their annotations on the text. Once they have finished reading the text together, the teacher will read the comprehension questions to the students. They will have 3 questions to answer instead of 5, and will get extra time to complete the assignment. These students will have the questions read to them as well. If there are students who cannot write or type on a computer, the teacher will scribe the students' answers for them. These students will identify text features instead of completing a retelling for question number 1. They will identify the characters in the story, the setting where the story takes place, talk about the events that happened, and a solution to the problem. Instead of identifying the simile, the simile will be provided to them, and they will have to identify what type of figurative language is being used. It will be a multiple choice question. Their third question will be, what message or theme do you think the author is trying to say through Mark? Use evidence to support your answer. These students will have extra time to complete their assignment if needed. For students who have completed the assignment and are ready for the next piece or an extension, they will also have another assignment to do. These students will take close reading, text, and comprehension questions to help them create a paragraph. In their paragraph, the student will write a text connection where they will identify a time when they either were like Mark, feeling insecure about something, or were like Adam, who was being ridiculed or made fun of. With their text connection, the students will identify the event, talk about the solution or resolution that happened in their story, and provide inferences for similar events in their future. Does anyone have any questions or concerns? Here are the resources I use for my presentations. If you think of any questions later on or would like some extra samples, please feel free to email me. Thank you.